All right, let's make sure that our onboarding page is protected so that we ensure only users that are logged in can access the onboarding page. We're going to do protect page here, similar how we did with our homepage earlier. And so given if we want to use Tanstack query to be able to retrieve data from our database, in this case, be able to also submit our business information. So from our wireframe, we're going to get the address, but we're also getting the name, the image URL, all the stuff that's required within our schema. We need to be able to submit it, and all of that is done within hooks. And in order for hooks to work, you need to specify that it's on the client side. And so, unfortunately, you can't mix client components with async functions, right? So you can't declare that onboarding page is a client component, but also make it async. It's just not possible yet. Maybe in the future it'll be available, but one of the remedies that we can do to solve that is to create a nested onboarding contents component, and we can specify this as use client, and let's just create the skeleton of it so that we can add it. So it won't be async. So Copilot, you're wrong there. It'll be just return, the same thing. But basically what we can do is get rid of this. Honestly, we can even get rid of the parens because we're only going to have the onboarding contents here. And we simplify the function to just look like this. We can hit save. I'll actually move this formatting to the way that I like it. Save. We can see that we just have the onboarding. So if we just refresh this, it's totally the same. Look, I can change it just to make sure, like flex, column, height, full, items, center, justify, center with full, and then I'll put it in the middle there. So just for you to 100% know for sure that the onboarding contents is there. Let's create our API routes. So we can get rid of test here. We don't need it anymore. Actually, we'll keep it just to show something like the model of how to do it. So we can honestly actually copy paste this, and the way that we written it, this is kind of a very basic generic way of writing it. So you can really copy paste it. There's going to be a minor change, but I'll show it when we actually do orgs.ts here. We can paste this in, and then we need to include it within our routes here. So we can pull import orgs from /orgs. And then the way that I do this, because you could just write like .route /org with an S, orgs, and just keep letting this go all the way to the right. Not really that clean, especially when you could potentially go off screen. Even though I have text wrap, it gets a little weird with the text wrap. So what I do is I just enter tab, and I'll just format these in this way and know that the last one is with a semicolon. So that's one way of doing it. Also, you could just get rid of the semicolon if you just wanted to add a bunch of ones, because if you accidentally put another route here but the semicolon is here, whoops, that breaks up this route here. So if you don't want to be able to do the formatting of like removing the semicolon or remembering to go here and do route, oh my goodness, spelling, route here, right, and then like enter here. I don't know, it's personal preference there, but we're adding our orgs here. So if we go back to /API/orgs, we should just get the same user information. That's what we got here, right? In our database, we have this orgs table that exists with nothing in it. So let's just go through the process of actually retrieving it from our database. And so to do that, we can do const orgs is equal to, and since we're using await, so if we're doing a database query, and we're pulling from our database here from Drizzle. And remember that this DB that we're grabbing is the one that we created inside of our drizzle.ts here within this database folder. So grabbing it from Neon, we were able to create a Drizzle instance, and we named it DB. So that's all we're referencing here. Let's just change that so that it's in order. Since this is an await function, the difference between this and test, we're not querying anything from the database. This could just be, C, an arrow function with a parameter of C standing for context. In this case, we can't just have it be a regular arrow function. If we have await, they're only allowed with an async function. So this is the basic addition. Look, we could also make this an async function, and nothing, would change about it. If I comment this out, you can see we get the exact same result. If we went back to test, we'd get the same result there. If you really wanted to make sure, right, hello world, go back to orgs, right, we get data hello world. All right, so just wanted to be super consistent about that, show that it all works. So we're going to return orgs here in data, but let's actually finish up our query. So db dot, there's a bunch of commands here that we can do. This is all part of Drizzle. Inserting, later on when we insert stuff, we're going to need to use that. Updating for our patches, and then delete, obviously for delete. For get functions, right, to be able to get data from our database. It's a weird one. We have to use query. There's no get. I guess you could technically use SQL there, but we're going to grab it from orgs. And actually, let's see here. Dot. And we have two options here, right? It's not a function, sorry, so I don't know why I keep doing functions. Getting distracted by Copilot. But we can actually get all of the orgs. Right, this will grab every single org that is stored within this table when we have it in the future, or we can find the first one. So in this case, if we're gonna just specify the one where if it's just a slash here, there's nothing extra to API/orgs. We're going to grab all of it. So we can just do find many and then return our orgs here. So if we save this and then refreshed it, right, you can see now that we have orgs, and it's an empty array because we're not pulling anything there. Cool. Let's see here. Great. Now let's do an example of the get, and Copilot's actually spoiling it. We can do something called using parameters, query something specific. So I'll just write out the full bit here, const user, get the authorization done, if, so I could have just copy pasted it from the top here. But basically, I could call this like org ID, you can name it whatever you want. But it's basically saying like, hey, it's a variable parameter that could be added here, and we're going to be querying it. So, we can do const org ID, or sorry, just ID, because whatever you name it up here is the same way that you're going to pull it here. C dot, let's see, C dot, where is it? I actually forgot a crucial step here. So not just the fact that we have to verify that authorization exists, we should also verify that this ID is valid. And so that's why I was like trying to figure out how to pull it from the context. We got to make sure that it's valid. And there's a couple of different ways that we can do it. One of them, and I think is the easiest just for the parameter here, is to use Zod. And so we're going to need a Zod validator, and I don't think that we've installed that, so we need to shut down our server and install it. We're going to do npm I /Hono. Actually, let me check first before I install. Import z validator from at Hono / nope. So we don't have it yet. So we're gonna do npm I at Hono /Zod validator. So if you remember when we were doing the email form, we had a way to use Zod to kind of verify that things are of the right type. So we want to make sure that this ID corresponds to the same type that we specified here within our org. So we wanted it to be a string. And so we need to make sure that this passed parameter here is also a string. So now that we have that, we should have it up here. There we go. Zod validator. In the future, that should just autocomplete for us. So what is needed in Zod validator? So it's a little complicated here. There's a lot of stuff. So for the most part, there's two things that we're going to need here. And we're going to work on JSON in the future. That's usually when we're posting or patching something. We'll provide a JSON object with, the information that we want to post or patch the data in the database. For the most part, right, we talked about grabbing this as a parameter. So we're going to use param here. And now we need to specify z, the Zod object. Let's bring that to the top here. Z dot object. And then specify that we have an ID, which is z dot string. So thank you, Copilot. That's the only parameter we need. So now we can say that, hey, we want to make sure that this parameter that the user gives us, we're going to require that it is of type string. So we can now do c.rec.valid param. You can see that that lines up with this parameter here. And we're able to pull our ID, which is 100% a string. Now look, if you wrote .optional, which might be the case that sometimes we're going to call an API call, and sometimes an ID may or may not exist. We may not know it. And so if that's the case, we can just return a negative API call. And this seems valid from Copilot here. So if the ID does not exist, meaning that it is undefined, so not undefined is true. So this executes. We're going to return a JSON an error and return invalid ID, and something went wrong, so it's error code 400 here. And then anything below this is if there is a valid ID. So we're going to do const org singular, because we're just going to be grabbing one organization, one that matches the an org that we find. So it's not find unique, it is find first. And find first, we need to specify using this where method here. We're going to use an equals function from drizzle ORM there. And inside of this, and this is the reason why I made it uppercase, the name of the table, because if we tried to, in this case, just because we're grabbing a singular org, it's okay. But, if it was plural, right, we were trying to grab a bunch of orgs that were matching like a bunch of IDs or whatever, right? Like if we had lowercase orgs here and then lowercase orgs for the table, there would be a collision. But in this case, we're just making sure that ID matches this org ID. Sorry, it's comma, and then that there. Now, this may or may not exist, right? So there's undefined here. So if it's a valid org, you get the actual org object. And so we'd be happy to just return c.json with the data being org, right? Whoops. What's wrong here? Right. And we need to take care of the case where if org does not exist, we're going to return c.json error, no orgs found, and that's a 404 error code, right? Like, hey, the orgs doesn't exist, we're going to return a 404, just like if a page didn't exist, we'd return the same thing. So we have 3 different codes here. And oh, by the way, if you didn't notice on some of the previous requests, by default it's error code 200 if you don't specify one, and that error code status code 200 means everything's all good. Everything within the 400 is some form of error, right? Cool. So that's pretty much able to get a specific ID. Now we don't have any, so we need an actual post function, and we're just going to specify it as just a slash, nothing, no parameters that are needed. And later on we'll see what are the difference between calling something that requires a parameter versus when we do a post here, we're providing JSON. Let's see, what are the JSON? Oh, okay, yeah. So we need to specify it. Now look, we can do z.object again and provide. When we want to create a new object, what are all the fields that we want to provide? But look, that's a lot of fields, and I don't want to really just write all of them and stuff them into this object. And so we have an easy shortcut hand way of doing it. So if we go back into our orgs schema here and see that this is our orgs, we can do something within Zod. We can export const insert orgs schema and create insert schema orgs. Now, why is this not? Oh, do I have to install something? I think I have to install drizzle Zod, so need to remember to do that. Drizzle Zod. Let's install this real quick. Okay, all set there. So if we get rid of the, whoops. If we get rid of the A here, why is it not? Okay, well, I guess we'll just do it the old-fashioned way. ABC order, so import, create insert schema. You know, sometimes just from the IntelliSense it doesn't load. So there we go. Drizzle Zod. And so now we have the create, and basically inside of this Z validator, instead of needing to write down the whole object, what we can do is just write insert org schema and import it from this org schema file. And let me just move this so it's an ABC order. We're going to save it. And we're going to do comma, async, C, arrow, context. We're going to do the same user get auth, and then if not user, return unauthorized. So great. And, well, Copilot's already getting ahead of ourselves, but if we just do JSON is equal to c.rec.valid JSON here, if we hover over our JSON, we can see that we have all of these different pieces here, which is really great. We can make sure that when we pass a JSON object and call this API route, we make sure that we have all of the pieces. And then we can do await db dot insert orgs. I'm going to provide the orgs there, and then we're going to specify what values we want to provide. And so we can just do JSON. And look, if you wanted to see what the resulting orgs table looks like, you could do const orgs is equal to that. But you can see that this returns this weird, and well, not weird, but a opaque neon HTTP query request result. It's because you need to do an extra returnings function here. And if you do that, then you get a list of all of the objects. So look, it's optional. I don't really need it to return the orgs at the end, but just in case you needed that functionality for whatever reason, now you can just do c.json with data of orgs, right? And that would just work. You'd be able to get it. Personally, I don't need it for this project, so I'm not going to do the extra hassle there. So we'll just do that, and then just return a message. Whoops, need to do an object message, which will be org is created. So that'll be a different error message than this 401. So cool. Look, another way of doing it, right, is to, if you really wanted to be very thorough with the error checking, you could do like const orgs is equal to await db dot query, right, orgs find many, I'll just write it out, find many, right? You could also just say like orgs length, right? How many are there before, right? And then do like the const orgs here, which is equal to this dot returning, and then specify if orgs dot length is equal to orgs dot length, right? Then the orgs was not created, return error code 500, right? Because obviously if you were able to create or add in the extra orgs, then this org should be one longer than the existing orgs. But obviously if that's not the case, then we didn't do it. For the most part, I haven't ever seen a insert ever fail through any normal usage. Now, like, let's say the power goes out or neon breaks, in the middle of one of these insert functions. Like, I don't know. For the tutorial's sake, I'm not going to do this for every single one. If you wanted to be thorough and, if this was an actual production, you'd probably be doing something similar to this. And I'm sure, people who are drizzle experts or something would know, like, a maybe easier way of verifying that everything was good. But, this is the way that I usually, do it on production systems. But just for the sake of this tutorial, if you just see me do await db insert, know that I'm not covering for the like corner case for whatever reason, like neon's not working or the user's internet shuts off halfway through an API call or something crazy like that. It's just an edge case that I'm not going to worry about for this tutorial. So all that we're going to do is just do this await db insert here, get rid of all of this stuff, and just say, hey, this is able to execute, org is created. Great. So let's see here. We already have UUID, so we're going to be able to provide the ID within here. We have a name, created at, image. So we're going to need to be able to provide all of this information, which will be going on inside of our onboarding contents. So let's get to that. It's going to be done in multiple steps. And so, if we wanted to specify the different steps that we're going to have, we can do it within, look, you can navigate and do like 2 routes to name each of the steps and then like be able to do onboarding / and then navigate to the other one. It's just that it's going to be hard to pass data along between the 2 pages without like doing like a really messy, URL parsing. So I'd rather just store it within state and then just like do it within the same component. So the way that I'm going to do that is just specify this enum, enumerated values. We need our business info, which is the name and the image, and then business address. And so with this enum, we'll be able to switch between the 2 screens and be able to control within a single component the data between the 2 steps. So we're going to need use state from React. We're going to need use router to route once we're done. Router goes for state alphabetically. Let's see. Cool. So that's it for now. Let's do const router is equal to use router. And let's do const. And this is square brackets, so we're creating state. Current step set current step is equal to use state, provide the type as being onboarding step, and then provide onboarding step dot business info, because we're going to start with the info first. We're also going to create const org info comma, set org info, use state. And for now, I'm not going to specify what the type is because we don't have it yet. But we're just going to provide null for now for this. And great. So we're going to need to create a function called const render step, an arrow function. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a switch statement here that tracks what the current step is. So whenever you call this function, it goes into the switch statement, and based off of the current step that we're on, we're going to case, and we have the different cases here. And look at that, Copilot actually. So we're going to do case onboarding step. Wait, did that get added? No, okay. Onboarding step. I thought it imported something by accident there. We're going to return, yeah, I think that's a valid name, business info step. And we're going to do case onboarding step dot business address return business address step. Great. Usually you provide a default. It's going to be really hard to have a default, but if there is, we're just going to return, a div which says invalid step there. We'll just copy this here to just put it within the center. Here, because we're actually not going to keep this, all that we're going to do is return the render step function here. So if maybe there's another way that you could do it, right, with like a tertiary operator. And I guess I'll do it. I'll just comment this out for now. But like you could technically do current step dot current step is equal to, yeah, basically this. Like you could also do this, and just because there's two steps, you can flip back and forth in this way. This switch statement, I like to just use it. Look, if you're adding an extra step to the onboarding, this is, you're going to have like another, like here-ish, you're going to have another like question mark, something, right? And then you're going to have to like keep nesting like tertiary operators like that. Looks really messy when you go beyond two. Like in this case, it works to have two of them, but if you're adding, and this is like future proofing it, I guess, you're adding extra steps, like you're just adding an extra case and returning the component. So I think that this one's a little bit more scalable. So we're going to use that one. Render step function here. We're going to do this, and we need to create it. So let's add in our, semicolons there real quick, and then create the two components. So we need to do business dash info step.tsx and business address dash step.tsx. So we have these two. Let's create the skeleton of these two things here. Business info step. And we're just gonna have an empty div there, just so we don't have an error anymore. And we'll just do copy paste the same thing, but instead of info, this is address. And then now we can import these two components. Cool, fun. So let's make sure that these are separated out there. We'll know that business info step and address step, they're not going to be used in anywhere else other than this onboarding along with onboarding content. So I'm fine with /. You can read out the whole route if you want, or a whole path if you want, but I don't think we're ever going to use it without onboarding contents. So I'm fine with the / there. Cool. Let's jump into the business info step here. So what we're going to have is we're actually just going to create a form. So something that actually looked similar to the email form that we created earlier. We're going to import use form from React hooks form there. We're going to import use state from React. We're going to import Z from Zod. We're going to need our button to trigger things. We're going to need from shadcn form, whoops, make sure that I actually get it imported. There we go. Form control, form field, form item, form label. Great. We're going to do input. We need our inputs here. Grab that. Make sure everything is from @/components/UI and then whatever it is. And not accidentally using the Redux UI one. We're going to need our orgs schema that we used earlier in the API. We're going to need that upload button from our @/lib upload thing. So we're going to need that. And we're going to need import Zod resolver from @hooksformResolvers Zod. And so if you remember from our email form, we need to specify our form schema here. And we're going to do insert orgs schema. And we're going to... so technically you could just do like, you could just leave this, right? But remember that this step, we're only going to be grabbing the name and the image URL. So specifying that the form schema has everything is not going to work, because in this step, we're not grabbing the address, the, the state, the city, the state, all that stuff for the address. We're only going to be grabbing the image URL and the name. So we should only grab that, and we can use that with the pick method here. But something with the pick method is we can only specify if we want it or not, right? We can only do like image URL true, and that's it. We can't actually specify the type that we want. And unlike the email schema where we said, hey, it needs to be non-empty, right? We can't specify that here. And we can't control how we want our image URL and name to be formatted. So pick, unfortunately, while we will use pick in the future to grab image URL and name in the future, to get more granular controls over the answers that are being given by these forms, we're going to use the extend function or method instead. And we're going to do image URL, and we're going to use Zod here, z.union. And this union allows us to specify multiple Zod types. So it's going to be z.string.minimum1, and it's going to be optional, right? And we're going to say that z, it's just going to be empty string if it's, so that we don't just have like an undefined image URL. Name z.string.minimum of 1 there. So even though technically like our image URL can be undefined within this our schema, I just find it a lot better to just change it to like empty string, and then like have the image be like, oh, it's an empty string, it's not valid. So, as opposed to dealing with undefined, which could cause errors. Now look, since we're not going to be using all of the other parts of our schema, we need to omit it from our schema. So that's another method that we can do. And so we're going to remove created at, we're going to remove ID of true here, updated at true, and then wait until the end to do this. We're going to add in all of our address stuff. So address city, address country. I'm just going in ABC order. Address state, true. Address street, true. Address street 2 of true. Whoops. True. And then address zip, true. And I think that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I just want to make sure like all the address stuff is always 6, and then these 3. Cool. Awesome. And we need to export, we need to export this thing as a type. So export type business info form values is equal to z input type of form schema. Great. So this business info step component is going to take some props. So we're going to need to specify those default values, which are optional. Business info form values. So we're just grabbing that from here. Okay. We're going to need to provide disabled of type Boolean. And we're going to need an on submit, which will provide values, business info, form values, and it'll return void. Great. And let's make sure that we just get our props here. Default values, disabled, and on submit. And give them all, whoops, not that, business info step props. There we go. Great. Let's see. Next, we need to create our form. So const form is equal to use form, provide our business info form values. Yep, that one. We're going to provide default values, and the resolver is Zod resolver form schema. Okay, great. We are going to have in state here has uploaded image, set has uploaded image. So it lets us know whether or not the user has decided to upload a photo or not. Totally optional. So, you know, if they want to have a little profile picture for their business, you're welcome to do so. Great. Next up, we're going to create a state variable here to hold after we've uploaded one of our photos here, or the user has uploaded a photo. We want to be able to display it, so we need to be able to keep track of what the URL to the photo is within upload thing. So we want to keep track of that. And it'll be string and null, so just because this photo being uploaded is optional, we're going to have it be null initially, but then, you know, once a user has actually uploaded their photo and uploaded it successfully to upload thing, then it's going to be stored as a string. So great. Next, I think we can actually get started to create the form, the actual contents of the form. So we're going to do a class name here. And I'll just make it on larger screens, take up 50% of the screen. And then, you know, if it's on a smaller mobile style, like you see here, then it'll take up the whole space. We're going to use form here and just spread the values from the form value that we started here, right? So we created used the hook here to create an instance of the form. So we're just going to pass that in to our UI and then shed cn UI there. Next up, we are going to create a form tag here with its own class name. Flex call, column, padding top of 4, space y of 8. So we want a little bit of space between the top and the bottom, and we want spacing between the different form fields. And, you know, spoilers, we're going to have 2 of them, so we just want them separated out from each other. We're going to have some form of handle submit here and provide submit. So nothing too drastically different from the email form that we created earlier. Okay, next up, the first form field here. So we're going to need the name of the company. Form field, not form item. Here. We're going to provide a control, form.control. Name is name. Here, whoops. Good thing about TypeScript is it reminds you when you make a tiny mistake like that. Whoops. Spread the fields variable here and do form item, form label, and just write here. And the reason that I'm doing it in quotes here is because I'm writing your business's name. Now, I mean, grammatically, you're supposed to write it like that, I suppose. But this little quotes here, it's going to cause a little error because you're supposed to use the little apostrophe tag. But if you just do it within quotes like this and use the curly braces here as a way to be able to access, variables. In this case, right, this is just a string that you're providing in here. So this apostrophe will cause an error if you don't have it within this quote and curly brace structure. So just a little way to get around that there. Control here, input, and we're going to spread field again, just like it says, disabled equals disabled. And we'll close that up. I don't think there really needs to be a placeholder. You could provide a placeholder if you like, but I think that this is pretty straightforward enough that we don't need a placeholder. Now, the next part is going to be if we do have a I'd rather it be uploaded photo. I wrote that there. Wow, that was weird. You can tell I've been working on this for a long, long time. If there is an uploaded photo, so meaning it's not null, and since we know that if we're providing, we're going to be setting this to a string once we actually have the URL, we'll know that this is not null, and then we can actually display the image. So let's just get a div here so that we can put it in the place that we want. Flex, justify, center with dash full so that it'll be in the middle of the screen. And then we'll have image here, alt, uploaded image. Thank you, Copilot. Class name, we're going to have rounded. Oh, yeah. So because the icon is going to be, held within a little circle anyways, I think it's fine to be rounded medium. If it wasn't like used within like a little circular format, then I'd be a little more hesitant about rounding it off, but I think this is fine. And then source, so we provided a height of 200. I'm going to do uploaded photo here for the source, and then width, we're just going to make it square, so 200 and 200 for the height and the width. Let's see, what did we miss anything? Just the wrong image. Oh, we haven't imported image yet. So we'll do image here. We'll do next/image. So I forgot to put that up there. So we'll just do that real quick. Back down to here. Next, we're going to do the form field to include the button where we can upload a photo into it. So control is equal to form.control. Name is equal to image URL, and the render here, we don't actually need the field, so I'll ignore that, but we're going to need our form item again, we're going to need our form label, and we're going to use, we're going to do some things here, but before I continue into what's needed in the label, I forgot a class name here. Then the items, so we're going to do flex call with full, just style up the upload button a little bit. Then we're going to do uploaded photo. If there is an uploaded photo, we'll say business image, and then, logo, and add a logo for your business. And I'll just capitalize logo to be consistent here. So yeah, if there's an uploaded photo, we're just going to provide a little label underneath our image here that says business logo. And if we don't have a logo, then we can prompt it to the user, add a logo for your business. Cool. Next, we're going to have our form control here. And inside of this, we're going to use the upload button. that we have imported here from @lib/upload thing. Make sure that you don't grab it directly from upload thing. Remember that we had to create a separate folder. I don't actually remember where I put it. But, oh, sorry. It actually says it there. lib/upload thing. You have this upload button here, right? So, make sure that you don't accidentally import it directly from upload thing. We wanted to first create the instance of it first and then be able to call it from anywhere. So that's the point of that. So make sure you just upload it or import it from the right place. So what we're going to do is we're just going to style it a little bit. Or actually, let me, what are the things that I actually need? I think I need the endpoint. And I think that's the only thing that I need. So image uploader is the only one. And if you're asking, wait, what? Yeah, image uploader. Why is this not? Oh, okay. Weird IntelliSense thing there. If you're wondering where this image uploader comes from, it's because it's the default thing. Let's see, right here, image uploader. So when we created our router here to deal with the files with an upload thing, this was just something that we copied directly from the upload thing documentation. By default, they have this image uploader, and we have all the things that we need to control for the fact that, like, the max file size, you could specify how many files you want, all those different types of things. There's a lot of fields that you can provide there, but for the most part, we just need this image uploader here. Now, you also see that they have like a little auth function here. We don't need to worry about that because we're already running our own auth, right, to both on the routing side, but also on the page itself. So we're pretty secure everywhere across the board. This was in case you weren't doing it the way that I was. You might need to create some form of auth here. We personally don't need it because we button down both the website side and the upload side. So should be good there. So cool. Let us actually go to our onboarding page just to see what it looks like as of current. So let's go there. So you can see here that your business name here, we have the logo, and this is what the default look is for the upload button. This is included here. Let me see if I can actually find really quick. Yeah, so right here. Yep, found it. So as you can see here, they're just explaining that these are the different pieces of the upload button with an upload thing. So you have the outer container here, you have the actual button, and then they have this piece of text that's been named allowed content, right? And so for us, oops, back to the app, there's an invisible container here, right? You could create a border here to just see where the container is, but you can just imagine there's a container around here that's invisible because there's no border that we're providing to it. By default, you have the button itself and then the allowed content, which, again, remembering from the core here, right? Max file size 4 megabytes, so we're just providing the same information here. Cool. So we want to style it up a little bit, so we can go and directly change some of the appearance here. So we can do allowed content. I actually don't want this visible, so I'm just going to write it as being hidden. Certainly your, whoops, what on earth? Here we go. Oh, and hidden needs to be a string. There. So if we save that, right, boom, it's gone. You can have it if you want. I personally don't think that you need it, but if you want to have that, totally cool. And for the button itself, I want to change the styling. So if we have uploaded a image, then we're going to do BG Emerald 500 border 2 font medium. So I'm doing this for both the success case and the base case here. Hover BG Emerald 400 text medium width full here. And then the base case here, let know, the user hasn't uploaded a button yet. BG Sky of 500, border -2, font medium, hover, on hover, it'll be background sky of 400, text medium, width of full. So if we save that, we're just adding this so that it extends all the way across the screen here. It's a little bit on the sides here, so let me see if I can add in. Can I do px of 2? Yeah, add in a little bit on the sides here so it's not like directly against it. That's cool. Add a little bit of spacing there. So look, you can style it in any way. I decided to make it width of full. Like if you just removed this, right, it would just wrap around the choose file. You can see there that there's a little, it changes from BG Sky of 500, a little bit darker, to something a little bit lighter when you hover over it. Made the text a little bit larger, I believe. And so all in all, feel free to style it in the way that you see fit. This is just the way that I'm going to do it. Provide a long button here. Other things that I can do to it, right? I can control the text that's inside of it. So we're going to have, for the button here, has uploaded image. And we're going to have logo uploaded here. And then for the success case and for the base case, upload logo optional. Cool. So it should say upload logo optional. Once we actually upload one, it'll say logo uploaded. Great. Next, we need the disabled here. So this button is going to be disabled if we pass into this that it's disabled, or, and this is very key, if there's already an uploaded image, then we're just going to disable this button, right? Don't let the user upload multiple files, because that would be malicious of them to do so. Look, you can institute a way to like correct an image if you want. I'm not going to do it for this tutorial, but if you want to do that, feel free to do so. So when the user completes their upload and everything works properly, then it's going to call this function, and there's going to be a response in the parameter here. So we're going to do form.set value image URL res, and it's a array technically of all the different files. Again, we're only allowing the user to upload one, so we're just going to grab the first one, or rather, we only want to grab it from the user, the first one, so we'll just grab that, and then we'll provide the URL there. And seeing as how we have this URL already, we can provide it to our uploaded photo URL. So we have a couple of state variables that we need to update. So has uploaded image will be true, and set uploaded photo URL to be the same response, the first array element position, and then the URL there. So I think that should be everything that we need. Why am I missing? Oh, I need the final submit button here. So that's why that button was not used yet. Class name, text, medium, width, -full. Again, feel free to, style your button as you see fit. Type of submit, and just write create a new business account. Cool. So feel free to style that as you see fit. If you want to do variant of outlined, right, or make it variable, like, hey, the name is not empty and there's a logo, then you can change it from outline to full, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to keep it this way for the tutorial. So when we upload a photo, we can open it up, and let me find a photo that we can use. Let's see. Where did I put it? There it is. So just our little poke CRM here. You can see it working, doing a little upload here. Oh, little issue here. Thankfully, we've caught that. So we need to actually go into file that we don't often go into, next.config.mjs. We need to add in the fact that we can make API calls to upload thing. And, we haven't done that yet in there, so we're going to need to add it. And it's a pretty easy addition. What we're going to need is images here, remote patterns. It's going to be an array, and inside of this array is an object. We're going to have host name, utfs.io, and the protocol that we're going to use is the normal HTTPS. Cool. All right. Totally forgot to do that. Whoops. Comma. There. So now we can hopefully reload this. Looks like it's reloading. All right. Let's try that again. Just the upload for now. We are going to add in this one. And there we go. We've gotten a little logo for our business. Just happens to be the same one as the company logo. But whatever your business or organization logo, hopefully it looks as cute as this guy here. You're welcome to add it. And let's just name our business test for now. Well, actually, we don't have the next steps there. So why don't we, you can press the button. Nothing's going to happen just because we don't have it controlled there. So let's see here. Yeah, we need to add the on submit to this. We need to add in the same thing for the address here. So we got a lot of work to do. So let's keep on keeping on. So what do we need for the submit here? Well, we have this org info here, which is going to hold for this first step the business info form values that we are going to grab. Just the image URL and the name. Just because we're doing the form in multiple steps, we need to hold it while we work on filling in the next one. So we're going to do this here, and we're going to do const on submit business info and do business values, just so we're very clear. Business info form values here, and yes, so we're gonna need to update two things: set org info to be business values, and then set current step. So we're gonna move it to the next step, and then it's gonna be onboarding step dot business address. Cool. And then the on submit here, on submit will be on submit business info. Great. Let's see, disabled. We don't need to touch that yet. Actually, we need to do the default values. So in the case of this, and let me expand this out so they're not all on one line. Personally, I like things being on one line, but I know it's hard to read for certain other people. And let me make it a little bigger so it's easier for people to read. I don't know why it got shrunken down. But yes, image URL here and name here. And then we have our on submit here. We'll pull this thing down here real quick. And there we go. Cool. I think that is pretty much all she wrote for this one. So now we just need to do something similar, but for the business address steps. So first thing that we're going to do is do the complete opposite of this. So we will grab, well, let's see here. We don't need the image, so we will be reusing this stuff here. I believe. Oh, and I just realized that if we're using use state here, then we need to make this a client component. So use client. Oops. There. Make sure we don't forget about that. So this one will also be use client here. Do we actually need state within the addresses? We don't. So we don't need to include that. Sorry, I'm getting a little confused with my sample code here. We're going to need our button to do the submit. Oh my goodness, if I could spell button there. We're going to grab, and I'll just copy it. This line here. We'll need the input. We'll need this. All of these. So just copy paste these three things. All the forms, the shadcn form components, the input components, and then the orgs schema from our drizzle schema file there. And then we're going to need the Zod resolver. And so that should be everything we need to get started on getting the addresses. Now look, there might be a library out there that allows for you to manage, what are the cities, what are the states, correlating with Google Maps or whatever. We're just going to do something super bog simple here. You can do all the error validation as an upgrade to this if you'd like. For me personally, we're just not going to worry about that for the tutorial. But for our form schema here, we're going to do the complete reverse. Street, not string. Z string, though. That's what we need. Zod. And we're going to do a minimum of 1. And then I can't imagine a street address being longer than 255. So we'll just put that as the max. We're going to have the same thing for address street 2. So copy, paste that, and add a 2 in there. Address city. Z string dot minimum 1 dot max 255. Oh, I just realized that this is not the exact same because street 2 is optional, for the potential to have, an apartment number or something extra that a user wants to add to their street address. That would just be address line street, address street 2. So we'll just add this in here. Z string minimum of 1, and it is optional. And it could be an empty string by default. There, cool. Address state Z string. Again, if you want to, you can add in all 50 states and validate that. We're not going to worry about it just for this tutorial. But please do so, or feel free to do so in the live actual production. And then, yeah, there we go. Address zip. So all those should be the same. And now we're going to omit a few things. We're going to omit created at ID, image URL. We're going to omit it. So true there. Name is true. Updated at is true there. Close that up. Export type business address form values is equal to Z. Input type of form schema. Great. Cool. So, yep. The props are going to be the exact same as the ones in the business info step here, but just we're swapping out this values, the type of this values with our business address form values here. Let's do the spread operator here, or spread out the props here to have default values disabled and on submit, and give them their types there. Cool. And just like what we're going to do here, we can actually just copy this, add that in there. So const form is equal to use form. And instead of the business info, we're going to use business address values. And then let's see what else. We won't have any states. That's why we got rid of the use state there. We're going to go directly into adding in the form itself. So we're going to have the same class name here, large with 50% width of full. As it turns out, this is the exact same here. So we're going to add that in there. And this is why sometimes I hate copy pasting stuff in. So feel free to write it all in if you'd like. so you don't have to worry about these formatting issues. There we go. Gets rid of all the errors there. So we need our form field here. So honestly, we can just copy this. I know I just said I hated copying, but this should be fine. So again, form fields, control, should say an error here because name is not part of the schema. We're going to start with the first one. So address street, and then provide street address. So I don't need the curly braces because there's no weird apostrophe or character that's going to trip up the TypeScript linter and pull up an error. So that's going to be that one. And we're going to need a few of these. So next one, easy. This one's going to be street 2. 2 here. And the next one, which is address city. And then this is going to be just city. What's next? This one's going to be the state. So we'll just call this state. And then call this address state here. Next one is the country. So address country here. Provide your country. And oh, by the way, for the state here, right? You can obviously do some wizardry stuff by tracking which country you're in. Like if you're in Canada, you might use provinces. If you're in the best country on earth, America, then you're going to use states. You know, adjust it as needed if you want in your live version. In mine, I'm not going to be doing that just for this tutorial, but up to you. And then the zip code, which I don't know if other countries have zip codes, but you know, in America we do, so we'll just have that. So again, same caveat for the state. If it's applicable, feel free to add it. Feel free to omit it from the schema if it's not applicable in your country, or if you wanted to institute that, feel free to do so. Last up we're going to need is the button. It's going to serve as the submit. So this one, super simple, right? Nothing too crazy here. And the disabled, whenever this form is disabled, and then type is submit, and then we're going to say confirm address. Great. I'm going to save that. We are going to provide within this on submit. So we need to provide some form of on submit here. But why don't we just look at how it looks first, make sure that we can actually progress to the next step here, and get that going. So let's save this. Doesn't look like there's any errors. So now that we're on this step, we're going to be triggering this on submit when we click this. So what's this on submit going to do? Just take us to the next step, and then the next submit we haven't implemented yet, but hopefully should allow for us to look at the address step. So let's do create, and here you go. You have the street address 2, city, state, country, zip code. Now you can do some maybe interesting things about how you space some of these out. Maybe you can put these two closer together. You can put city and state along the same line. You can mess it around just like I did earlier with the email forms, but for right now, I'm not going to worry about it too much for the tutorial. We're just going to keep going here. So let's see. Okay. So I think that, you know, just having this, it's fine. You know, it's halfway across, or it's 50% of the screen whenever it comes to these sort of things. But, you know, for me personally, I'd much rather style this up a little bit more. So we're just going to add some information here. So for this business info step, we can add in a div here, class name flex column, gap x of 2 items, center width of full here. We're going to have an h1 tag here and provide some text to it. So we're going to have text 2XL font bold, and let me put that in ABC order. Shocked that it's not so in my sample code. We're going to do tell us about your business here as kind of the header. And then let's scooch this thing up one so it's within the div. So if we... so before I save this, because it's going to flip back, another thing that you could do if you'd want, right, is to create like another div here. I didn't do this in my sample code, but, you know, if you want to, you can do this, do class name, flex dash row, gap, x of 2, and then just do like an arrow left here to kind of go do like a little go back function here, right? So class name, actually, it wouldn't be for this one. Sorry, my mistake. Because right, like this would just go back to the home screen. I mean, if you wanted to, you could do it, right? You do cursor pointer on click. That was probably the reason why I didn't do it in my sample code, but you can do router dot push home, right? So like that would be a way for you to like be able to allow for someone to go back. But yeah, well, let's see how this looks style-wise. So I'll save this and then refresh this. It'll go back. That does not look that good. So let's see if we can fix how this looks a little bit. I didn't add it to the last one, so might need the items center here. Yep. So make sure that's in line, and I'm not sure. Can we do like a there's not much. I mean, we could try to space these out a little bit. So instead of gap 2, you can do justified, but then that would be on the right side. That would be on the left. You could do absolute position here to make sure that this arrow is on the top left side. But if you do, you won't need the row. So, honestly, I could do that. Yeah, let me remove this stuff from being a row with each other and do this as an absolute position here, and then just say left of, I'll give it like left of 4 and top of 4. So it's like a little offset, or 2. Here, left of 2, top of 2. Let's just see how that looks. So it's there, right? You can see how it's like off. Maybe a little margin top here. MT of 2. That pushes this thing down a little bit. I don't know if I like that actually. PT of 2, right? So you don't have the scroll bar. That's kind of out of line with that. I don't know. You can change it out however you wish. I think maybe that thing it's very far to the other side. So I don't know. Up to you on how you want to structure it and how you want to make it look. That'll just be the way, because if you hit this, take you back to the home screen. And then from the home screen, the only way we can get back to the onboarding is to do it in the URL. So that is the way that you can do that. Let's see here. But like, look, we can grab this chunk here and use it for this business address step here. Whoops. Here. And just add this here, and we need to, add that there. We'll probably have to bring this down in a little bit, so we'll do that now, and then do that last div there, and then there we go, fully styled it. And instead of doing router push home, instead, what we're going to do is set current step to be onboarding step dot business info. Great. So if we have just test, and look, we don't need the image, so we can just create. And then if we hit back here, it takes us back here. Cool. Awesome. Anything else that we need here? I guess a way you might have saw, like I put test here and then I moved forward and then I moved back and I lost test from this. It's because the default values are just these values here. Another way that you can do that is like org info, right? Does it have a name? Otherwise, provide empty, and that's one way that you can do the default values. You can do the same org info colon image URL there. And we save that. So if I do test here, let me see if that actually works. Because if I create this, go back, yep, test is still there. So cool. We lost the image because I had to reload all that stuff, or renavigated the page. So cool. So that's one way of doing that. We can have the default values here for our address, but once you submit the address, you're basically done. So I don't know if you want to do like the on go back, remember the address. I didn't do that in my sample code, and I mean it's pretty trivial to do so because it's just a similar thing to this, right? When you hit the back button, you just save it. So you're welcome to do so if you think that's necessary. I personally don't, but yeah, personal choice there. So let's change this here, this label here, to say, and we're going to use these quotes again because we're going to have an apostrophe. Or no, sorry, we're actually going to have a variable added in here. So we need the business address for, add a little space there, org info dot name, and we know that we're always going to have a name because it's the required value, and we're going to be passing it into the org info when we hit the on submit, and that's the only way that we transition to the next step. So we know that this thing is really valid, but from TypeScript's perspective, it technically could be undefined. And then we're going to add a space here, and then to comply with anti-spam laws, just like we're grabbing that straight from Mailchimp there. And look, if you wanted to, you could do this so that it doesn't have that little overflow on the end there, if that bothers you. Cool. You could also do the same with this arrow left, if you'd like. Let's see, and we're gonna add a little explanation as well. This p tag here, class name. Whoops, class name. Oh, I see why this is running issues. It's because it's not inside of the p tag. All right, and we're doing quotes, text of large, and then your business address will be appended to the bottom of every email you send via this platform. All right. And then you can bring this down if you'd like, so it's all within one thing. And sure, I'll do it for the arrow left just for consistency's sake. There. And then bring that down. Cool. Anything else that I need? I need the default values here. So default values, address. I'm gonna do it in the order that I do it in the form. I usually do ABC order for everything, but just in this case, we'll do in the order that I include it in the form itself. So everything's just gonna be an empty string. Maybe for the country, I'll just put that in there because I'm a homer. And then we need the on submit function. So we're just going to call this the on submit all business info. Or all business info. And then we're going to have address values be business address form values. And then we're going to submit it at some point. But for now, instead of this empty function, we're going to provide this one instead. And let's see here. Do I want to? Yeah, why not? So let me look at our API here. We have our orgs here, and let me just check in our features. I've already forgotten. Yes, we have not done it yet. So we're going to create in features here. And look, this is getting messy. So I'm just going to close this. Oh, well, before I do that, let's just validate to make sure that everything is collected correctly before we actually even go to storing it within our database. Let's make sure that we get the orgs info and the address values that we actually want. So cool. This will print out. So let's open up our console here. And let's clear out our console. So we'll have test here, and then we're going to open this up and include PokeCRM. Little image there. So successfully been uploaded. Then we're going to create a new business account, and then for the business address here, we're just going to say 123 Test Street, apartment 42, in San Francisco. I don't know how to spell San. You know what? All right, Boston, Massachusetts. So Massachusetts. Yep. So Boston is in Massachusetts, and the zip code of Boston. I don't actually know the zip code of Boston, so we'll just we'll just do that. I don't remember. Well, there's a few of them. I just don't remember the one off top of my head. So cool. We're going to confirm this address, and it should print out in the corner here. And there we go. We have the image URL. We have our name here. So it's stored within, if you remember the order that we do the console logs here, right? This is our org info. And then we have our address values here, right? Boston, US, Massachusetts, 123 Test Street, apartment 42, and the zip code of 5 zeros. Great. So cool. Now that we know that that works, we can actually go in and create our API routes. So let's clear down here. We're going to go into our source. We're going to go into features, and we'll create a new folder here for org, orgs with an S, so it matches the schema there. Then we're going to add in another folder. We're going to provide an APIs folder. Okay, so to properly explain how it works, we're also, nope, we're not going to create a new folder. We're going to create a new file here. We're going to use get orgs, or just a singular org. So I want to go through the process of creating both the API routes, because we're going to be doing this a lot, and make sure that you're able to follow along, but also show how Tanstack query works, all that good stuff. Tanstack React query. Sorry, I usually just call it Tanstack query. But anyways, export const use get org. So I'm creating a hook, right, and using the normal convention of use and then blah to be able to do something. And in this case, we're going to be trying to get a organization from our database. So we're going to use query here from Tanstack React query. It takes in a object, and we're going to provide two things here. We're going to need a query function, which will be an asynchronous function. And for now, we'll just leave it empty. And then we're going to need a query key. So whenever and in this case, it's going to be an array of strings and just have orgs in it. That, for the most part, finishes this little hook here. There's a couple things that we need for this actual function here. But to explain it, this query key, so what Tanstack does is it allows for you to both get things from a server, from an API point, and allows for you to push data the other way. And so when you're pushing and pulling data, you want to be able to keep an internal state to track what values are. And usually you create some form of query key, like in this case, and say all of our orgs, they're going to be referenced within our state by this value here, this orgs value. And it's within a list, just because there's going to be a list of all of the keys. But, you know, when we're doing the opposite, so let me create the other side of it. When we do use create new org, which is what do we need for our onboarding, .ts here, export const use create new org, what we're going to be doing is something called a mutation. We're going to be changing things. Just because when we create, right, whatever we had within our database is going to change. And so we need to be able to update it later on within our state that it's been updated so that we go back and retrieve the things that we need. And so, if one of our pages here, we got the org here, well, if we updated the org with this create new org, then the old orgs are going to be invalid, right? Because we're going to be missing one. So to be able to update it, we need to have a key that we reference. Now, when we create a lot of these different mutations, like use create new org, we're going to delete orgs, we're going to create a bunch of orgs at the same time. Actually, we're not going to do that for this tutorial, but, pretend that we are for the sake of this example, right? We're going to be, if we change orgs in whatever name, like use change org name and so on and so forth, like to have to write this over and over again and multiply that by all of the different, database schemas and features that we're going to have, like you're going to have a really long, like invalidating function. You're going to do it over and over and over again. And so, it's going to be hard to remember something that is a plain string here. So the way that I get around that is by creating within the library folder here, create a new file called query keys.ts as a way to store all of the different keys here. So we're going to create a type here, type query key, and that's basically going to be a string array, just like how you saw it here. And there's going to be a type query keys, query key value, key value pairs. And in that case, it'll be key, which is of type string, and that's going to be referencing one of those query, or a series of query keys. Export const here, so we're going to be exporting the first key that we're going to have, which is orgs. So we're going to create an orgs query key here and set it equal to orgs. And so inside of our use get orgs here, instead of writing this bit here, we're just going to call org, or we're going to use orgs query key. And now for the actual mutation that we're going to write here, we're going to need a few things. So hold on tight. There's going to be a lot to write here. So we're going to need to create a type. So we're going to need to create a request type. And we're going to need to create a response type. So response type telling TypeScript and whatever function or whatever object or component is using use create orgs. Request type, what are the things that need to be passed in? Response type, what is being given? So we're going to need infer request type function provided by Hono here. And we're going to need type of, let me check this real quick. Yep, we're going to need type of client.api.orgs.post. And post takes in JSON. So where did I get all of this bit from? Well, inside of our app, API, route, all of our routes here, inside of orgs, we have our post here. And post, since we said it takes in some JSON here, we're going to need to tell the user that it's going to be requesting JSON. And as you can see here, this is all the stuff that needs to be within the JSON, right? The ID, name, address, blah, 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 blah. Created that. All that good stuff needs to be included. Great. Now that I'm looking at it also here within this API route, we can optimize it a little bit. later on down the line. Don't need to worry about that now, actually. So we'll deal with that later. Infer, not enter, response type. So make sure that you have both infer request type and infer response type, because they're different. And sometimes, if you're just, blindly tabbing through, you might have infer request type twice. These two do different things. So make sure that you have them for their corresponding thing. So you have infer response type for the response type and infer request type for the request type. I've done that mistake many a times and wondered why the types weren't matched. That's why. So the post here, right, we're just returning some form of JSON here. We don't need to pass anything like JSON here. We're just going to be getting either the error of string or message of string, right? So you can see here, right, it can either have this error of unauthorized, or we have this return value of the message with the message of org create. So hopefully that clears up what these two things are and the fact that we need to be able to pass those things through. So use mutation takes in, I forgot. Before we do use mutation here, we need to grab our query client, which tracks all of the different states and tracked stuff by Tanstack query. So we'll just put that there. And in this mutation here, we need to pass in our response type, an error, and the request type here. And inside of this, provide a function. Here, we're going to have mutation function, async, JSON. And look, you can wrap that up in a paren if you want. Since it's the only value, I'm just going to provide JSON here, an arrow function. Const response is equal to await client, await client dot API orgs $JSON, and then we're going to pass in JSON but in a destructured format. So we're not returning it as one whole object, or we're not passing it in as one whole object. We need to pass it in as all of the individual bits. Then we're going to return await response.json, what the response type was asking for. So there's no more issues there. And then we're going to have an onSuccess function here. And look, this is what I was talking about earlier. Like, we can do query client dot invalidate queries and then do orgs here. Let's see. Is that right? Oh, yeah, we need to do an object here and then provide query key of orgs. So that would be the normal thing. Now imagine if me with using all the gets here and other API routes was trying to access the orgs. But, if I created a new org, I need to update all of them. So, you would have a lot of these invalidated queries, and all of them you'd have a bunch of these, plain text strings. So you'd have to remember how to spell them right, make sure you didn't have an error later on. If you did put an error in, you're going to have not updated states within your code. And so when you create an API call and you're wondering why, for example, a data table isn't updating, or I created another organization, why isn't it appearing in the list of organizations? Because maybe you forgot to invalidate the queries so that Tanstack knows to trigger another API call to pull the new state, or to pull the new value that corresponds to the query key. So this is a pretty messy way of doing it, in my opinion. And the way that I kind of deal with it is to create a singular function that handles it all for us. So going back into our query keys file here, we can explicitly create an object here called query keys, or query key value pairs. here, which is of type query key value pairs, and it's an object. And so for our orgs here, we are going to specify all of the different keys that are dependent on the values within orgs. So obviously one of them is our org query key. Whenever we create a new getter function or a new API call that grabs the orgs in any way, then we're going to add it to this orgs query key. And then we're going to create a function that wraps the invalidate function that I wrote earlier here, and does it for you. It's export const invalidate query keys, and then we're going to have mutated query keys. So these are the ones that are changed. We're going to do key of query key value pairs, and it's an array. And we're going to take in that query client, so of type query client. And so that's an import there along the top there. And then we're going to do const query keys of type query key. And I know some of this can be a little weird to say out loud. But basically, we're just going to grab all of these bits here based off of the query key that's being provided here that corresponds to this key right here. Mutated query keys. So we're going to go through each of them. For each, we're going to grab the key. Const keys is equal to query key value pairs at the key that we're grabbing here. And since it's an array, we could pass in a bunch of query keys if needed. But, for this case, we're only going to be changing the orgs. Later on, if we created a mutation that changes orgs and something else, then we're going to need to adjust that. Let's see here. Next, if keys exists, right? So it's, because this, if you're trying to access this and this key is not in here, then it's going to return, I believe, undefined. And so basically you're checking to make sure that keys actually exists here. So then you're going to do keys dot for each. And look, I'm doing it within the same line. You can add a little curly braces here to separate it all out, like keys dot for each, blah, blah, blah. I just think that it's better to, or for me personally, it's better if you do this. Key arrow, if not query keys. So if it's not already within this query keys list here, array here, then we're going to add it. So include key. Then we're going to do query keys dot push that key into the array. And yes, this is supposed to be query keys. And so we can add a semicolon there. I believe semicolon here and semicolon here. Great. And then lastly, we're going to do query keys dot for each key that needs to be invalidated. That's precisely what we're going to do. We're going to grab query client here and invalidate queries. The query key, and then pass in the key. So great. Let's see, is it include, sorry, with an S there. So instead of just writing through every single query, invalidated query, we're just going to pass in all of the query keys into this function, and it's going to handle all the invalidates for us. So in this case, we're going to do invalidate query keys, and inside of this array, let me just check to make sure. Oh, nope, I don't need the array. All I need to do is just pass in orgs query key, and then the query client. Great. So great. We actually have this route here. We've created our orgs function already here. So we should be able to grab that. The one thing that we will need, and is a way for us to actually chain this org to the user. So if you look in orgs, right, and I can actually go to the schema. So in source db org schema here, there's no way to chain this organization to a user. We have this helper table here of user orgs, right, which creates the relation between an org ID and an org user, right, and sets or lets you know which organization is a user's primary org. So we're going to need to amend our API route here from something that was just to explain how it all works to actually be able to set this user org relation. So later on, we're going to be able to make sure that a user is actually a part of an organization by looking at this table and saying, okay, for this user, do they have a user org that says that they have a user org ID here that matches the ID of another org, right? So one of the ways that we can do this is by creating await db.insert user orgs here. I'm going to give it values, right? So by default, I think that if you create a new organization, that organization should be primary, the new primary one. I think that just kind of makes sense. Org ID, you can just grab that from json.id, and then user ID, you can just grab that from user.id. Great. So now that we can actually track that the user who created this organization is a part of that organization. So let's look here. This getter, we can actually do a check here in the future. To be able to get the org information, we need to make sure that the user is actually a part of that org. So how can we do that, right? So we can do it by doing const user orgs is equal to await db.query user orgs.find many, where equals user orgs user ID user.id. Okay. So if the user is not a part of any orgs, user orgs.length is equal to 0, then we need to return an error, c.json. It's not a 404, but instead it's going to be error. It's going to be a forbidden error. So like user has no orgs 403. I think that that error code matches this situation the most. If they're not in any user organizations, they are technically authorized because they have an account, but they're not allowed to actually go through and look at different organizations if they're not a part of it, right? And so being able to grab orgs here, oh, that's weird. So now we can do the error check here. Oh, weird, because this is just grabbing every single org within the table. What we're going to do is just allow for the user to grab orgs. So we have a list of orgs here, so we need a new thing to do comparisons. We're going to say in array here, orgs.id, and check it against user orgs.map, and we're just going to grab from every user org here the ID. So in the list of org IDs that correspond with the user orgs here, you're going to check it against the organization ID. So now we're grabbing all the orgs that belong to a particular user, not what we had before where we were just grabbing every org stored within the database itself. All right, cool. We're going to do the similar thing here for this get specific organization here. Org not found. And now we're going to need to add in an extra check here by doing and adding in an and here, making sure that this organization is the same thing that we did here, right? So this, I'll actually just copy this and put this here to make sure that this orgs is within the user's orgs, right? And so, yeah, we can put orgs not found. It could also be a forbidden 403, but, in this case, right, there's multiple potential errors there. So we'll just error out with the 404. You can be more pedantic by saying, expressing what is the actual issue. One, by potentially checking this here, and then this, and then being able to return the corresponding error code. I'm not going to worry about it just for this tutorial. So cool. We should have everything. There's no validation or check here that's necessarily needed. I guess the only one would to make sure that a passed in org ID doesn't match an existing org. So if how do I do that? Const orgs is equal to await db.query.all orgs, right? Not just the user orgs, but all of them. Find many, and I guess honestly, you can grab all of them, right? And then don't error out, right? Because this might be the literal first orgs, so we don't want to error out if there is no orgs. But just write if orgs dot length greater than 0, right? Then we need to check. If not orgs dot find o for orgs org.id is equal to json.id. So if orgs length is greater than 0 and they were able to find if they were able to find that one of the orgs matched the ID of the ID being passed into JSON here, oops, we shouldn't be adding that. So instead, we are going to return c.json. We're going to return error 400 org already exists. Great. So then we don't create all of this, create another org with a duplicate ID. Okay, cool. So now that we actually have this post here and we have our route, we can actually try to create our first organization. So let's collapse everything, go back into source, app, onboarding, components, and then the onboarding contents. So inside of our onboarding contents, we can extract that hook that we created. Create org mutation is equal to use create new org. There, and let me just put this here, separate it out. We can get rid of these console logs here, and sure that if for whatever reason somehow we hit submit all business info, but there was no org info, then we need to break out of the function. If there is org info, then we can call org create org mutation dot mutate, meaning that we're going to be changing some stuff, right? And in this case, we're going to be adding a new organization. So we're going to pass in all the values of our org info, which is the name and the image URL, and then we're going to do the same thing for the address. So great. Let's see what are some potential issues here. ID is missing, so we need to be able to provide an ID. We're going to grab ID from UUID here. And whoops, not that one. We're going to need import UUID from UUID v4 here and call the function here. So now we can get a unique ID. That's what UUID stands for, unique ID. Let's see here. And then we need to create an extra function here, which says on success, actually we don't need this to be a curly brace function. We're just going to do router.push/home. Great. So we're just going to navigate back to home once we finish creating our function. Amazing. So cool. Let us see if we need anything else. I think no, everything looks good. Everything looks ready. So let's try this out. We're going to do test here. We can upload an image. We'll just upload the same poke CRM image here. Move on to creating the address here. So 123 test Avenue, apartment 24, Boston, Massachusetts, and the zip code of 5 zeros there. And let's hit confirm address here. Did that go through? Yes, it did. Wonderful. UUID. Okay. Well, you can upgrade to something that's you can use v4 from UUID module if you'd like. I guess I'm installed just the base version. Nothing too critical there, but we can see no errors, no issues. We're gonna need to create our little org toggle up here, and let me just go over to Neon real quick. Neon, our database here, and look at our orgs. And this is our test org that we just created. You can see the time at which I created it and all of the information that I put into there. Cool, great stuff. I'm actually going to delete it because we're going to go back to the home screen and basically create a big banner that'll appear to prompt the user to create their organization, actually get someone to the onboarding. And the same banner that we're going to use for all of these to prompt the user to actually create a business account before they actually go through and use any of the features within the app. So cool. We're going to delete this here, and we're going to go back and start sprucing up more our homepage. Okay, let's build out the home screen, show that we can retrieve data from the database, and then start changing some of the displays based off of that. The example that we're going to use is the org toggle. And then later on, we'll move on to create our campaign screen, create our contact screen, and then be able to load that data within home. So let's go through and get the org toggle working. So one of the ways that we can do that is going into our home page here with an apps, platform, home, a home page here. And if we're going to be pulling data from the server, we can't do it within here because in order to pull, use hooks, right? The use, get, anything, really, for that matter. We can't do it within an async function. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap all of these components here that we have within our homepage, platforms, campaign summary, campaign audience summary card, move them into its own component. We're just going to call it home contents.tsx here, so that we can call this a use client component here. Export const home contents. And given that this is a client component, we can now call hooks in here. And let's just grab some of our imports here and just transfer them over. So all I did was just move some of the stuff over to here and remove these _ / components because they're all within the same directory. Cool. And then we're going to return, and we don't need the parentheses there. We just need to return the home contents component. That little change there, you can see, made no change to our homepage. You can refresh and see nothing changed. We're going to need to be able to retrieve stuff. Now, in the way that I lay out API calls, I could create another API within here to be able to pull, orgs, and then later on campaign, and then audiences. I could do those one by one and have a bunch of hooks here, like use, get, blah, blah, blah. Use, get, orgs, use, get, campaigns, here and then use get audiences, right? Get audiences, right? I could do, 3 hooks like this, but really, for page contents like this, and usually, again, I wish that they could be done in here, but since we're doing authorization here, we have to do the API pulls, the calls to the hooks in our contents component here. I'd much prefer to just call it all at once within a single API call and just retrieve all the data we want within a single component, or within a single object. So what does that mean? It's hard to just explain it in the abstract. I'll just show it. What we can do here is nested inside of our underscore components folder. We're just going to add in an API folder here and create a hook use get home data.ts. And so just like the other ones, export cont use get home data. So we're creating a hook to be able to wrap around our API call here to our server. And we're going to do query function first, async. Nothing needs to be passed. We'll leave that blank for now, and then we need to create our query key. So let's go back into library, query keys here, and then add in an extra query key. So export const home query key, and we can just call this home. And then, since we know that we're going to be using the org toggle here within the web page, if the orgs change, then we're going to need to refresh that in the home page. So we're going to add home query keys to our orgs. So now that we have the home here, keeping track of orgs, and later on we'll see if there are any changes to other parts of the schema in the database or any API pull, we're going to be adding home to it. But for right now, we're just worrying about the organization. Great. So let's see here. So we need to actually create the API route. So we're going to go into routes here, and usually I try to separate them out from just the base schema ones, like orgs here. I'll call them just page data here, page dash data, and then add in a file, home.ts. And then inside of this, and let me just clear down and open these. Can I fit them well side by side? We can see that what we're going to need to mirror here is this basic get function here. So what we're going to do is const app is equal to new Hono dot get empty function there. We need to verify auth async C for context, and then do a function there. User is equal to C dot get auth user, and then if not user, return C dot JSON error unauthorized, comma 401. Cool. So I could copy paste a lot of these, and we can do that. I'm just doing this, writing it out one more time just to explain what each portion is. So this portion, we're trying to get the user from our session, and if there is an authorized user, we continue. If there's not, we return with a error message here, unauthorized, and a 401 unauthorized message. Next, we're going to need to see if the user has any organizations they're part of. Await DB query, right? So we're going to grab DB from DB drizzle. There. DB dot user orgs. So remember that we have the table user orgs, which keeps track of the relation between a user and what orgs they're part of. So given that we have our user information here, we can see if there are any user orgs, user orgs that have, if there are any entries within the user org tables that has a user ID which matches, and in this case matches just means equals to the user's ID. So just trying to explain this and go kind of slow and replicate a lot of the stuff that you can see here on the side here. And then if user orgs doesn't exist, right, because user orgs can potentially be, or sorry, not user orgs, user orgs.length is equal to 0. So since it returns a list, we need to make sure that there are actually orgs in the list. If not, we're going to return c.json. And instead of doing the 403 forbidden error here, we're instead, just because of how the retrieval works, if you hit an error with a API call within home here, if you return an error, it's going to try again. And that's not really the behavior that we want if there is no user org. In this case, if there's no user org, we just want to say that user orgs, right, is empty. We just want to return that. And really, technically, you could just return user orgs, right? The other thing that we're going to try to keep track of, right, which is tracked within user orgs, is what the primary organization is. Now, if there is no user orgs, then we're going to return this empty list that naturally is passed or is returned from this find many function, and just do primary org is null. All right. So hopefully that's not too confusing. It's just that we don't want it to keep calling the API over and over and over again and potentially leave us in a loading state. And you'll see why later on, why the loading state matters. But we don't want to just have the website keep trying over and over and over again when we can just return null here. Cool. So const primary org. So given that there are user orgs, at least one, we can try to find and see if an org is primary, right? But given that none of them technically could be primary, like for whatever reason, you know, our database gets modified and every single one of the is primary fields of the orgs is somehow set to false, like we have some form of error, right? Then primary orgs is undefined. It's a really rare edge case, but in the case that it happens, all we need to do is just return the first element of the user org, so the first user orgs within this list, and just call that one the primary. If you don't like that behavior, and I could see there are certain reasons why, there aren't drastic changes in the code, but you know, one of the ways that you can do it is to literally set the first one to be primary permanently, so you'll never have this problem again. For me, I don't want to set something to be explicitly is primary when all we're trying to do is retrieve data for our homepage. That would be like an unintended side effect of opening up and navigating to the homepage. And so I don't want to have side effects within my API call. It's a matter of convention for me. Perhaps in the future, outside of the scope of this tutorial, you can create a verify user orgs function at some point, or verify data integrity, or whatever you want to call it, that makes sure that at least one of the orgs is primary. And maybe you create a little pop-up, and we'll go through and actually create a pop-up later on in this tutorial, but creates a little pop-up that's like, hey, select one of the orgs to be primary. Like, you can do that if you'd like. I think it falls out of the scope of this tutorial, but maybe we'll revisit for a future tutorial. Okay, cool. So if we have the primary org and we have our user orgs, one of the issues is this user orgs only has the user ID and the org ID in his primary. It's not actually useful by itself, but what we can do is grab the actual orgs that belong to a user, db query orgs, dot orgs, find many. So we're going to grab all of the potential orgs that the user is a part of and do where in array. So inside of the list of orgs that we have, we're going to check to see if orgs ID matches any of the user orgs uo.org IDs. And so that's going to be some form of a list there. It should match 1-to-1. If not, that might be a data integrity problem. Again, verifying data integrity falls outside of the scope of this tutorial, but if you think it's important, you're welcome to do so. So what we're going to do is JSON primary org, and then we're going to pass in as user orgs here. I'm realizing that we might have a type mismatch here because this user orgs array might be different than this one. So instead of passing user orgs, I'm going to keep the name, but pass in just an empty array. So that's a little fix there that I made. That should cover everything. And then lastly, the last thing that we do at the end of every API route file that we're making here, we need to export default the app. We go over to our routes.ts or route.ts here, and we're going to import home from, and it's /page data /home. And then inside of our routes here, we're going to add another route /home, home. So we're going to have a lot more routes. We're going to go through this many times, but try to take it a little bit slow for just the second route that we've created. And I'll actually remove test now. We don't need that anymore, so I can remove that here and here just to clean things up a little bit. Great. And now that we have this API call here, let's just console log out the data that we can get here, just to show that the hook is working. So const, and the way that hooks work, especially with use query, is there's a data variable that's returned, and the reason that exists, actually we haven't done the actual API call. So const response is equal to await client. We don't need to do the request and response type because we're just pulling data. We're not passing anything in, so we don't need to specify that in the mutation. In query, we don't need to provide that, so we're not going to create it. So client.api.home.get, and we don't pass anything in there. We need to check to see if the response is okay. So if we return the error, this if statement would trigger, and we're just going to throw new error and then return an error message, failed to fetch home data. Great. Look, you could technically return some stuff, so I'll just show you the next thing that we're going to do, and I'll separate it out just to make it look easier. We're going to extract data from await response.json, and then we're going to return data. So let's see here. That's a good reminder here. So this is the convention that I often do, where I try to grab everything and put it within data so that it's consistent across all of our API calls. Technically, or across all of our hooks. Technically, you can name it whatever you want. I just think data is the most consistent. One of the things that I'm discovering here is because I return this directly as an object, I need to wrap this inside of a data object. And this is just the convention that I typically follow. And we're going to do the same for this one. And so this allows us to separate out the difference between this error, which returns just a string, and a valid data, which returns an object of whatever. So cool. Now you can see that we can extract just the data bit here. You can see as a object, and there's two potential objects here. One as, actually, I just also noticed another issue here, that I'm returning the primary org of the user orgs here, but I need the actual primary organization. So the way that I'm going to do that is move the orgs above here. Or no, actually, I don't need it to be above. But what I do need it to be is grabbing the ID of the primary org here. So this is .org ID. And then this one .id, org ID, sorry. If it exists here. And then inside of primary org here, we're going to grab orgs.find org, arrow org.id is equal to primary org ID. And I don't want it to return undefined. I want it to return null. So I'm going to just do if there is no match for whatever reason between the primary org ID and this org ID, we're going to return null for the primary org while still keeping these orgs intact. Okay, cool. So we're going to save that. We made all the changes that we needed to this homepage API route. We've already got the way to grab data. So here, we're going to have our data, and then we're going to also grab is loading. We're going to destructure that from our API call. So from /API/use get home data. Look, you can put it in the features if you want, create a new folder and do home. You're not going to use this API route anywhere else, or this API hook anywhere else within your project. And so that's why I like to keep it together with home contents. But personal preference, whatever you wish. I personally like to put one-time use, or not one-time, but one component use API calls like this in a directory that's closest to the quote-unquote using component. So inside of data here, you can see that data has either a primary organization or null, a user orgs, which is an array, which could be empty, but at least we know that it's going to be empty of this org type. And data could also not exist, which means that our API call failed. Now that we have this, you can see that we also track the loading state, which is why the error really mattered. Because while it's loading, we don't want to just have a blank screen. We want to be able to show what are called typically in web development skeletons. So basically, if you have a card here, you're going to show like a grayed out card until the data actually loads, so that this component here, this card, doesn't just pop in. You get a smoother transition from a kind of flashing grayed out card to the actual data. So let's actually build that out so I don't have to keep describing it in the abstract. We're going to go back into each of our components here and create a kind of loading state. And an easy way that we can do that, right, starting here with the header, is to create export const home header, home platform header skeleton. And let's see here. Do I have skeleton already installed? I do. So now we can use the skeleton. Set it equal to, do we have a platform header? We do not. So we're going to go and deal with that real quick. Inside of this, go to our components. Is it in here? Where is it? Features. Where's platform headers? Let's go to source. Oh, okay. It's at the top level platforms component. Got it. Okay, so we don't have a skeleton made yet for our platform header wrapper component. So inside of app, platform, components, and then platform header here, we need to create it, and we also need to create our org toggle. So what we're going to do is do export const platform header skeleton, and it's going to take in children, just like the platform header. And so we're going to need to create an interface for that. Interface, platform, header, skeleton, props, and then do children, React dot React node. We don't need to grab React, so we don't need to import it from the top there. And we're going to do paste this here. So we give this children types, and then arrow function, and it's going to return a div, class name, flex, items, center, height of 68 pixels, so just matching what was on the top here. Alpha ABC order. I'm going to put this here. Next is padding of 4, width of full. So there's some parts of the header that I'm not transferring to the skeleton, just because they're not supposed to look one-to-one. They're supposed to look similar, but yeah, not quite. So what else are we going to have? We're going to have a div inside of here. So we have our children that we're providing, and then and we'll copy paste this here to do create the skeleton for our org toggle. We need to put these things into a row with each other. So flex row, gap x of 2. So just matching what is here. We don't need the MLPL here, so we don't need the padding and margin left here. And then we're going to need a user button skeleton. So we haven't created that yet. So we're going to need to do that. So let me go look up our user button here. And it's pretty simple. Export const user button skeleton. And that's going to be just a base skeleton here. Class name, rounded full, because remember that our user button was just a circle. And we're going to give it a size of 10. There we go. So we're going to save that. We're going to add this in here real quick. We don't need this stuff yet. Let's see here. Platform header skeleton. Whoops, and it takes stuff. Let's see, what else does a platform header need? Yeah, it just needs a skeleton for the buttons that we're going to have here, these 2 buttons. So we can do class name, height of 8, width of about 16. That seems fine. And just give like an MR of 2. So give it a little margin right. And then we're just going to copy paste the same one over. Cool. So let's see here. If is loading. Then what we're going to do is we're going to return. And we're going to return something similar to our contents here. But we're just going to use the skeletons instead. So we're just going to copy paste that in there. And then we're going to grab home, platform, header, skeleton. And let's just let that load real quick. Let's see if when we refresh, you can see we have the little flashing skeletons while it's loading. But they're not put precisely in the right place. So let me just go back and make sure that that works correctly. Let's see here. So what we can do is we can, honestly, we can copy this and add in the home bit here. And then add in this row here as well. And then put these two skeletons within this row. So they're paired together. And then allow for the platform to deal with the user button. So let's refresh that again. And that looks a little bit better, a little bit too push to the right a little bit. So this last margin, I guess we could give it like a margin of 10. So like there's two ways of doing it, I guess. You could go into the skeleton here and do the same, well, let's see. Did we actually do the margin left here? It doesn't look like it. So, let's see. Yeah, we can just do like a margin of 10-ish. So let's see if that puts it correctly. Yeah, about the right place. We're just going to need to extend the buttons out, make them look a little bit longer. So let's try 32. 32 here. We're going to refresh. And yeah, that looks about right, the right size. They're a little bit off, I think. Maybe we can go 28. I think that's a valid number. 28, let's see. Yeah, that looks about the same. So you can see that, like, and I guess I can really zoom it in so you can really see it. You can see that little, like, gray flashing. And I guess coming in a little bit closer, maybe 32 is right. Let's see. Can we do 30? Split the difference. 30 here. Whatever. Anyways, it's a minor thing. 30 is not a valid number. So 38, 28, and 28. So Tailwind has presets, but this doesn't seem to be a preset for 30. So, yeah, I think that looks pretty fine. We have home here. We have all of these. And, yeah, we don't have the border, so that's why you see a slight twitch there in the home. But overall, I think this looks fine. Right? The little circle here. The gray circles for the button, or gray circle for the user button, and then the two gray rectangles. You can see that they kind of flash in for a little bit, and so that the transition to having these buttons isn't so dramatic. So let's zoom back out. Cool. Let's do the same thing for our two summary cards here. So let's open them up. Campaign, audience summary. So let's see. We're basically going to mirror the same thing that we've done on the top here. We're going to do export const home campaign whoops, not lowercase, home campaign summary card skeleton, and it's going to return a card class name. Let's see here, class name of width of full. That looks fine. Okay. And then we're going to have card header, card title, which is campaign summary, and then we can provide as a description. You can copy the same one from date to date and add. We don't have the actual dates for the skeleton. And so, like, you could try to add, like, something and, like, do, like, little blocks for the dates and let the dates load in later. I'm just going to change it out and say, you know, loading campaign data. You know, just describe why it's, you know, why things aren't loaded yet. So we'll just do ... ellipses, kind of the normal loading thing. We're going to add card content here. And then... we're going to add in basically all the same divs. So let's see, I can actually copy paste this part here. I shouldn't have copied over that last div. Oops. Whatever, it's fine. We'll just do /div, whoops, /div. And then do the same thing here, /div. And then one more, /div. And then... we're going to have one skeleton here, which would be class name equals width of 1/2, height of 4. Actually import skeleton, class name, width of 1/4, height of 4. Whoops, 4. And then do the same thing again. Okay, cool. So let's see. Refresh. Oh, we haven't imported in the card yet. So we're going to grab this column here and then put in our home campaign summary card skeleton here. Okay, and then if we refresh, there we go. You can see these two things are kind of a little bit squished. So it's actually because it's not gap X, it's gap Y. Interesting. I think. Let me see. That didn't seem to do much. I mean, I think it looks fine. Like, it's a little bit of pop-in, or a little bit of a extension for the card there. But if that bothers you a lot, you can. I think you can increase the height of the skeletons. They'll make it look right. Let's see. Let me just check this. Oh, it's nuts. It's segmented. Okay, got it. Yeah, that's flex row. Oh, I see. That's why it's gap X. Haha. Gap X here. There we go. You have this long campaigns and then a little bit at the end there. Look, you can play around with all of the different sizes if you want and see which one you want. I'll just keep this way. And you can change it as you see fit. All right. I think that we're basically just going to copy and paste the same thing into home audience summary here all the way at the bottom. So we're just going to change this to home audience summary card. Audience summary, loading audience data, and then import in the skeletons. So now when we, and remember to add in the home audience skeleton here. Then when we load our home page, we're going to have these loading states represented. The header kind of blinking is bothering me a little bit. So we're actually going to go into our platform header again here and add in the border because that's kind of bothering me. And then I guess we'll add in the shadow again. So I guess we could copy paste that from the start, but let's just see. Yeah, everything stays the same. Yeah, that kind of movement up and down was kind of bothering me during the refresh. So no more now that we've added in the border. Cool beans.